What is feminism, you might ask? Feminism is the belief that all gender should be equal. This sounds relatively straightforward, but people use the word feminisms to highlight the fact that many people interpret this idea in different ways and have their own ways of implementing the ideology. Some examples are intersectional feminism, womanism, ecofeminism, and black feminism.
Even though each type of feminism has a different focus, all can agree on a few basic values. The first is that women are oppressed by the patriarchy in all levels of society, socially, politically, and economically. The second is that wherever the patriarchy exists, women are made other through objectification and marginalization. The third is that all Western culture is deeply patriarchal, tracing back to Greek and Roman times. The fourth is that culture determines gender, which then leads to socially programmed roles. The fifth is that the goal of feminism is to promote women's equality, often through activism. Lastly, gender influences everything, whether we know it or not.
A prevalent issue facing feminism today is the current anti-feminist bias. This oftentimes consists of people boiling feminism down to the only part of it that they disagree with. This also oftentimes stems from various stereotypes. Some examples of these stereotypes is that all feminists don't wear bras, they're all women, they're all lesbians, or they all hate men. This is also prevalent in both the adult world and amongst the youth.
So if so many people have a problem with feminism, then why is it even needed? The reason that feminism is needed is because we live in a patriarchal society. A patriarchy is the system that places males as dominant and superior and restricts women. An example of the patriarchy in action today is the use of he pronouns when referring to males and females. This problem exposes the white male point of view, which is seen as universal.
This means that white males dominate the literary canon, which is the collection of works that we deem worthy of studying. This results in books not written by white males being considered niche rather than universal in a general underrepresentation of female writers. Some examples of authors that are dominating the literary canon are people like George Orwell, John Steinbeck, Leo Tolstoy, and William Shakespeare.
This phenomena of women's oppression spreads beyond the literary world. We are all raised with the influence of the patriarchy, and therefore almost everyone internalizes patriarchal ideals whether they want to or not. In this chapter, Tyson calls herself a patriarchal woman because she is a woman who has internalized the ideals of the patriarchy. That doesn't mean that she consciously supports them. Rather, she is recognizing that she has been influenced by the ideology. This struggle of internalized oppression is one that many feminists face.
Another example of the patriarchy in action is gender roles. First of all, let's define gender. Gender is how one chooses to identify with the pre-made, socially constructed identities of feminine and masculine. This results in different portrayals and expectations of the feminine and masculine. The feminine are expected to be more emotional, submissive, and focused on the home. The male is expected to be less emotional and more aggressive. They're also expected to be more focused on things like sports, sex, and cars. Gender roles enables male privilege, which results in the gender pay wage gap and men getting paid more money.
A rationale used to justify gender roles is the idea of biological essentialism, which is the belief of an inborn difference between men and women that puts women as inferior. This ideology uses the idea of inherent differences between the sexes to justify sexism and misogyny that we see in society today.
The patriarchy has created two boxes for women to fit in. The first category of woman is considered to be innocent, angelic, and virgin. This woman does not challenge the system in any way. She is considered the good girl. The second is characterized as slutty, bitchy, and independent. This woman is more likely to resist the system, but she is still objectified and sexualized by the patriarchy. It is important to note that both of these roles have patriarchal foundations, and neither of them truly liberate women.
We are not born knowing the ideals of the patriarchy. Rather, they are programmed within us at a young age. For example, girls are programmed to believe that they are bad at math, and therefore they perform worse. This issue is reflective in the adult world, where there are significantly fewer women in STEM fields than men. Language is another aspect of society that the patriarchy dominates. There are often two different words with very different connotations that are used to describe either a man or woman with behavior that is actually quite similar. For example, if a woman gets upset, people are often quick to characterize her as hysterical. On the other hand, if a man gets upset, he is often seen as having a temper or simply expressing his emotions. Women are also often called derogatory terms, while men are praised.
Something that is oftentimes not focused on is the way in which the patriarchy hurts men. Because the system characterizes emotions as feminine and feminine as inferior, men in society are oftentimes shamed for expressing any sensitivity. This is detrimental to the mental health of men, and it creates a phenomenon called toxic masculinity. We have established that the patriarchy impacts every area of society. This leads us to the question, will the sun ever set on the patriarchy?
There is hope in the fact that no ideology is successful in programming everyone, meaning that some will not be as programmed as others, and will see cracks in the patriarchal system that can be used to dismantle it. The subjectivity in everyone's point of view provides hope and a challenge in getting beyond the patriarchy.
A strength of feminism is that it's always pulling from other fields of thought and applying them to its category to help advance feminist principles. Two examples of this are the use of both Marxism and psychoanalysis. These are both historically sexist frameworks, but they still provide valuable insight on the female experience and feminist causes.
As women and all people move towards understanding the patriarchal systems in place and how we have internalized them, we have more power to dismantle these oppressive systems. As fields like feminist literary criticism rise in popularity, we have more opportunity than ever before to advance down the path towards equality.